My name is Joe Fox and I'm from the team at E-Yachts. Today we're going to take a look at the hull design and performance characteristics of the Axopar 37. Now the 37 comes in three models: the cross cabin that we have here, the Suntop, which is very popular, and then also the Spider version, the completely open boat. The hull itself is exactly the same across the board. I'll just walk you through a few of the features that make the Axopar hull so exceptional. At the bow we have a very sharp entry. This is not a traditional bow that slopes forwards. This is a reverse bow. This is designed to slice the surface of the water and the surface of the waves as we travel across the top. Just after the bow and right here we have a very big chine. I'd say this is about 6 inches. It runs back into the hull, and what this does, any initial spray that gets kicked up from the bow of the boat hits this chine and goes straight back down. As we run further aft we get 2 chines, and these run all the way back to the stern. This keeps the boat very dry, meaning that any water, any spray that might come up and go to the windscreen hits the chine and goes straight back down to the water. Another thing synonymous with the Axopar hull is the double stepping. Now this was very popular on the race boats in the 50s, 60s and 70s, and this is very important for us for fuel efficiency and fuel consumption. So what these channels do, you can see one just down here. This is the end of one of the channels. Now these run in a V-shape aft towards the keel of the boat. Now these channels suck air underneath the hull, so at planing speed the boat is actually sitting on a layer of bubbles. Now this reduces the friction, which in turn reduces the power required to push the boat, which in turn reduces the fuel consumption, which is very important on a boat like this. With a full tank of about 700 litres, we can get about 280 nautical miles at 28 to 30 knot cruise speed. This hull design is now in its second iteration from Axopar. So a couple of years ago, this replaced the Series 1 Axopar, and the team at Axopar actually spent more time in the R&D stage developing the hull shape and the water flow calculations for the hull than they did on the original Axopar 37. So it shows how hard it was to make a better boat than the first series, but I think they absolutely nailed it. The result of all the hard work developing this new hull was that it is 10% faster and 10% more efficient. In terms of the actual performance when you are driving the boat, cruising speed, as I mentioned, is about 28 to 30 knots. Now, that's probably the most comfortable speed as well, and you've got good speed in a range of conditions. This boat with the twin 350s will top out at about 51 or 52 knots. When you do drive the boat and you go up through the speeds and through the ranges of planing, you'll notice that you get very little planing angle. So as the boat's coming onto the plane at that 12 to 13, 14, 15 knot speed, there is very little trim or activation of the trim tabs needed, because the hull technology that Axopar have designed really helps the boat to get up on the plane without raising the bow too much. This is great for visibility as well, especially if you are a little bit shorter. Coming up onto the plane, if it's nice weather and the water is relatively flat, the hull can do most of the trim itself. Because the hull is so well balanced, the engines are not too heavy on the back, so we don't need to push the bow down. What we're doing when we get to about 21, 22, 23 knots, we're trimming the engines up. Now this, alters the angle between the hull and the thrust of the props. And what this will do, this will just bring the boat up to a really comfortable planing angle on the water, so you're not driving the bow, and the boat sits really nicely. If you do come into a little bit of chop, and we've taken these boats up and down the coast, Port Stephens, even gone further north in 37. So if you are coming into a little bit of chop, you're trimming the engines down slightly to drive the bow, give it a cutting motion through the water. As well as that, you might be driving the bow a little with the trim tabs. Now what this does is it slices the top of the water, reducing the slapping motion that you might get on a boat with a different design, and just generally providing a more contact full passage across the ocean. So they're really quite fun and intuitive to drive. They're very responsive. It is like driving a supercar on the water. As I said, 50 knots, you know, that's well in excess of what most of the boats on Sydney Harbour are doing. So when you're on that cruise speed of about 28 to 30 knots, if you can put the boat into quite a hard turn, and because of the design, the deep V in the hull, there are rails which run all the way aft, it really doesn't want to lose any grip on the water. At that point, you'll be trimming the engines down slightly just to reduce any cavitation that you might get as the boat is on that angle. The engines on all Axopar 37s do have the AMS gearbox, or the advanced midsection, that comes on all Mercury engines above the 250 horsepower range. This is an intelligent feature as it allows the engines to balance and trim themselves as you go through a turn to reduce cavitation. It also acts as an advanced shock absorber. So we've got the engines running, we're doing, 600 RPM, and there is no vibration that goes through the boat. Normally an engine at this RPM does have quite a bit of vibration coming through. Does mean that the engines are very smooth and very quiet on the back, whether you're doing kind of 45 knots or whether you're cruising along at 3 knots like we are at the moment. We have taken these Axopar 37s in a range of conditions, from dead flat to more choppy offshore conditions. Now, I actually prefer driving this boat, in fact all the Axopars, in less than perfect conditions, because it shows you really what they can do. They are great fun to drive. I hope you enjoyed that performance review discussion. Do give us a like and a subscribe if you'd like to find out a little bit more about these impressive models from 22 feet up to 45 coming next year, so very exciting.